Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Oh, walked right into that one. It is great to see all of you. It is my absolute honor to welcome you here today as we celebrate Pride History Month, a time for reflection, celebration, and most importantly, action for our LGBTQ plus community. Pride is more than just a month on the calendar. It is a movement, a legacy, and a living testament to the resilience, courage, and love of the LGBTQ plus community. As we look to the past, we acknowledge the pioneers who fought for the rights and dignity of the LGBTQ plus individuals, visionaries and activists who stood bravely against injustice, paving the way for progress. Their sacrifices and relentless advocacy brought us to where we are today. In the present, we recognize the ongoing efforts to ensure that every person, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, feels safe, valued, and empowered. Nonprofit organizations play a critical role in the mission, providing essential resources, advocacy, and support to those in need. Their work reminds us that true equality is achieved through collective action and unwavering commitment. One of the ways that the City of Frederick intends to help in this area is by providing added visibility for your organizations to be found. If you are connected to a nonprofit, please take a look at this QR code and scan that for us. We would like to add you to an online city database that we're pulling together. This information will be displayed at the end of the year once we've collected responses from each part of our community through these nonprofit events. We've witnessed countless opportunities for collaboration between all of the organizations, and we would like to continue that momentum as we move forward. Now, as we look forward to the future, let today serve as a call to continue in the fight. Let us commit to amplifying voices, breaking barriers, and fostering a world where acceptance and love reign. The road ahead will require continued passion and perseverance, but with communities like this, full of dedicated individuals, we can forge a future that is built on equity and justice for all. Now, it is my great privilege to introduce someone who has been a steadfast leader and advocate for inclusivity in our city. Please join me in welcoming our mayor, Michael O'Connor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at our 2025 Pride Cultural Connections panel. I'm honored to be here with so many dedicated Frederictonians, leaders, and advocates who work every day to make our city stronger and more inclusive. I want to acknowledge City Council Member Kelly Russell, who is here, as well as County Council Member MC Keegan Ayer. Thank you so much for your continuing support of the work that we do in the City of Frederick. I want to give a big thank you to Frederick Social for providing the refreshments that we're enjoying this evening. So if you didn't get any on the way in, be sure to check them out on the way out. And I want to thank Lakeisha and our city team that works very hard month to month to organize these panels, to find the panelists who will share these experiences, challenges, and triumphs. The stories really do matter, and representation matters, and listening matters. Connecting, learning, and lifting each other up, that's what makes Frederick a really special place. No one should ever have to hide who they are, because pride at its heart is about visibility, and visibility is power. And power, rooted in the heroism of events like the Stonewall Rebellion more than 50 years ago, when members of the LGBTQ plus community, led by trans women of color, fought systematic oppression. These acts of resistance were an inflection point in a fight for LGBTQ plus rights, a moment when presence became protest and protest became progress. Pride honors that legacy. It reminds us that when someone says, "We see you," they're not just symbolic words. It's an affirmation that you have power, and it's a call to use it. But real transformation doesn't happen alone, and it doesn't happen by accident. It takes partners to help turn that power into progress. And we couldn't do this without the work of our local nonprofit partners. Organizations like the Frederick Center, like PFLAG Frederick, Community for Frederick, the Osherman Family Foundation, SHIP of Frederick County, they are helping to build a more inclusive, compassionate Frederick. We're grateful for their continued support. Here in Frederick, we're working to build a city where everyone, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, feels safe, valued, and free to be themselves. That includes standing with LGBTQ+ individuals who face housing insecurity or vulnerabilities at school. Our commitment shows up in action through policies that expand across affordable housing, promoting ADUs, and fostering partnerships with the Housing Authority of Frederick City. It's also reflected in our belief that every young person deserves to be safe, seen, and supported. In this moment, let me be clear. The City of Frederick stands firmly with our LGBTQ+ community, especially our youth. All students deserve safety, support, and affirmation, no matter who they are. Period. Inclusive policies like the Frederick County Public Schools Policy 443 shouldn't be up for debate. They're essential protections for transgender, gender nonconforming individuals. And efforts to roll back these rights aren't protecting our kids. They're about erasing some of them. And we can't let that happen. Frederick is a city where inclusion is policy, not politics, and where the rights of our most vulnerable are non-negotiable. We protect our kids, we celebrate them, and we will never let fear define them. Our commitments cannot be just words, however. They must be evident in our actions. And in Frederick, we're doing the work too. You can see it in the work of our police department, which not only protects all residents, but provides dedicated, culturally aware support to the LGBTQ+ community through our Multicultural Liaison Unit. And in events like today's panel, where honest dialogue will bring us together. Last year, we launched the city's first Pride Visibility Grant, a small but meaningful investment in events and organizations that support our LGBTQ+ neighbors. I'm proud of that step, and I'm also proud that every year I've been in office, Frederick has earned a perfect score of 100 on the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equity Index. This recognition reflects our ongoing efforts to ensure equal treatment and opportunity for everyone in our city. We all know there's more work to do, so we have to keep moving forward, not just in the month of June, but every day, all day, in how we lead, how we teach, how we speak up, how we treat one another. In the words of Barbara Giddings, a pioneer in LGBTQ+ advocacy, equality means more than passing laws. The struggle is really won in the hearts and minds of the community where it really counts. So to our LGBTQ+ residents, allies, especially our youth, you belong here. You are seen, you have power, and your mayor will always stand with you. Thank you for being here, for your energy, your advocacy, and your pride. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Now I want to welcome our panelists. We have Chris Fair, Maryland State Delegate and Executive Director of the Frederick Center, where he leads efforts to support, connect, and advocate for the LGBTQ+ community in Frederick through inclusive programs and vital resources. Melissa Muntz, the Executive Director for SHIP of Frederick County, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting youth experiencing homelessness. And Joshua Pedersen, the Director of Grant Making at the Oshman Family Foundation, an organization committed to the well-being of LGBTQ+ individuals in Frederick County. Please welcome our panelists. Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Just killing a little time till I find the right page on my script.
We can talk for hours if you'd like us to get started.
We have about 45 minutes. So, well, thank you all for being here. It really is an honor to have you here and a pleasure to bring this conversation to our community. First of all, I did a little bit of an introduction, but I think I would like you to go into a little bit more. Tell us something that doesn't often show up in your bio, perhaps, about who you are and the work that you do and your organization's mission, really, and specifically how it works to support our LGBTQ+ residents.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you to the City of Frederick for hosting this incredible event and putting all this information together. I'm Chris Fair. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Executive Director of the Frederick Center. And something interesting to know is that I never in a million years imagined I would be in advocacy work for LGBTQ+ people. I struggled to come out myself as a young person and going all through high school without ever coming out. And it wasn't till I was a few years into college before I finally built up the courage to be able to share with my family and friends what so many thought, and I certainly knew with my community. And so this was never part of the plan for me. But with that being said, it has been the honor of a lifetime to lead an effort like the Frederick Center in our community and see the change that has occurred over the last 10, 15 years that has occurred in Frederick City and Frederick County. And the mission of the organization is simple. We provide resources and we advocate and we assist LGBTQ+ people to live their full, healthy lives here in Frederick County and make sure that we provide a space where they feel safe and a space where queer people everywhere can go to seek out the necessary resources to be able to live that full life. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you. It's a little hard for some of us to believe that there ever could have been a day when Chris Fair was not an advocate or thinking about being an advocate. So it just goes to show you that the path that we walk is not always a straight line.
That's right. So we are SHIP. We're the Student Homelessness Initiative Partnership of Frederick County, which is a very long name, so we really lean into the boat stuff. So we're SHIP of Frederick County. And we work with students experiencing homelessness all the way from kindergarten through age 24. So any young person who's experiencing homelessness, who is connecting to education in some way, we want to work with them. Our mission really speaks to building capacity in our young people and getting them to that next step. And we know that youth who do not graduate from high school are 3.5 times more likely to experience homelessness as adults. So we really want to make sure we are getting them across that finish line, like many of our students did last week at our local graduations. It's very exciting. We know that we can impact adult homelessness by intervening at the youth level. And we want to do that with all of our students. Surprising to some, many of our students identify as LGBTQ+. We see a lot of young people who are leaving situations that are not safe housing for them and coming into our service. And we want to work with those young people in the same way that we would work with a young person who identifies differently but is experiencing homelessness for another reason. It's interesting, our young people who identify as LGBTQ+, often this is their first experience with homelessness. So we work with many families and young people who are chronically homeless and have had that experience, and they might understand a little bit about our systems and what resources they can come to and how they can identify help. A lot of times when it's your first time being on your own and not having safe housing to return to, you have no idea where to start. So we're working from a different place with those young people, which really changes the way that we provide that service.
Thanks, Chris. Melissa, it's great to be up here with you. And Mayor, thank you for having me. My name is Josh Pedersen. I'm the Director of Grant Making at the Oshman Family Foundation. I'd been a volunteer for 6 or 7 years as a trustee of the foundation and now work there. We provide about 200 grants a year back to the Frederick community. It's about $4 million investment in our Frederick community, and that's one of our core values, is investing in Frederick, the good that is here and helping it grow. Another core value is we are community informed, which means we love to look at data and reports and numbers. And as Melissa talked about, citing numbers, or we look at some of the disparities among our LGBTQ populations or other populations in Frederick. We love to look at those numbers. But the other thing about being community informed is we listen to people around the table and we invite people to the table. We have a very inclusive board of directors. We have a very inclusive advisory committees, and we listen and reach out to the community proactively to make sure we are community informed in both data, but also the voice of people in our community. And that helps us make decisions about investing back in Frederick. So that's a key part of it that I think is really important. And then just a little, as Chris pointed out, I never would have imagined being here. It was 11 years ago, well, 15 years ago that I moved to Frederick with my wife and kids from Utah. And it was 11 years ago that I first came out and started to explore that, oh, wait, I'm gay and I'm coming out. And I'm so happy that my son's here and supporting and my boyfriend's here and supportive of me, but never would have imagined 11 years ago or 10 years ago or 9 years ago that I would be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. I think when people feel comfortable enough to share the stories, that is where affirmation starts, because it really is about being comfortable and knowing you can be comfortable in who you are as a person. We have some questions. We're going to introduce some of those questions with a little bit of video testimony as well from some folks that work at the Frederick Center. And so we're going to start with Glory, who is going to talk about why they support young people through the work of the supports program as the supports program director at the center.
On a personal level, I love being able to work somewhere that I know I will be affirmed and accepted no matter what. I changed my pronouns while I worked here, and it was no big deal. They just said, change your pronouns in your work email. And then everybody started calling me by my pronouns, which was really lovely. On a professional standpoint, though, I love getting to interact with our young people. LGBTQ kids are the funniest, most creative, and genuine group of people that I've ever gotten to work with. They make me laugh every single day, and it is extremely important to me to get to be with them through their hardships and celebrate their joys with them, and help them make the best decisions to live healthy and long, queer lives.
So what unique needs or concerns do you see in our LGBTQ plus youth here in Frederick, and how does your organization go about supporting them?
So the center started in 2012 by a student at Urbana High School who had been bullied, and he decided shortly before his graduation that he wanted to create a space that was open and affirming, where young people could gather for 2 hours every Wednesday night and just be with one another. And thanks to the folks at ERUCC who lent us a space in Kemp Hall, we were able to host the first ever youth group on a Wednesday night in 2012. And we're proud that to this day, that program still meets every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. The center recognizes there are a plethora of challenges that young people face. The Youth Risk Behavioral Survey that the Frederick County Health Department and the Department of Health release every year showcase that young people who are queer identifying struggle with substance use, they struggle with suicidal ideation, they struggle with bullying, they struggle with violence, they struggle with physical threats, they struggle with eating disorders, they struggle in every possible area. And to Melissa's earlier point, the only research that's ever been done on homeless youth, the only quantifiable research that's been done, showcase that 39% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. That is to say that while many, what I affectionately refer to as our elder gays, grew up in a society where it was a life and death threat to be out as a young person, it does not change the reality that today's youthful generations also struggle massively with lots of peer pressure, lots of social pressures on top of them that make the struggle real for them, even if it's slightly different than the struggles that we experienced in decades and generations past. So the center works very hard on two things. One, to provide a space where young people can express themselves and feel safe and affirmed, but also to help young people build the necessary resiliency to be able to survive in a society that hates them, some people who hate them for no other reason than them simply stating who they are. And that resiliency component is critical to the mental well-being of all of our young people.
I mentioned earlier, a lot of our young people that are LGBTQ+ are newly experiencing homelessness. So they grew up maybe in a family where they felt like they had a safe place to be, and at some point that dynamic changed. And for whatever reason, they no longer felt safe in that home. And we recognize that young people who are experiencing homelessness have a wide variety of barriers, many of which Chris mentioned. But certainly coming into this for the first time, and often in that situation, not having a supportive family member or a supportive adult to walk that path with you, it's hard to know where to go first. And what we find is a lot of our young people not only have all of those, many compounded struggles, but they have not been exposed to any sort of community resource prior to the time they show up at our door. So we really are starting from zero in terms of introducing them to resources, connecting them to things like SNAP benefits if they don't have food access, walking with them through the process of getting their own medical care, whether that looks like financial aid through Frederick Health, or whether that looks like insurance, or it can look a lot of ways, but really these students have no idea and no experience with that. And because housing is a basic human need, shelter is a basic human need, food is a basic human need, these are the things that they're more concerned about at that moment than connecting to their education, which can put them significantly behind. So we really want to make sure that our young people are able to access those basic needs, as well as many other needs, while they are remaining connected to education and continuing to have that school support system, remaining on track with their education, both for academic reasons and social reasons. When they start to disconnect from their peers and they don't have that support to fall on, and they also don't have a supportive adult in their lives, we walk into a very dangerous situation, which explains many of the statistics Chris quoted. It makes sense. At one point in time, we at SHIP did a little bit of, surveying of our young people, and nearly half identified as LGBTQ+. It's a substantial amount. And they're all in a different place in their journey, right? We really pride ourselves on individualized case management for that reason. We want to make sure we're meeting the student where they are and walking with them through their unique path. But they did share many of these same traits and barriers. We're very lucky to live here in Frederick. I say that all the time, and I really do believe it. We have so many amazing resources here in Frederick, and I'm so thankful for that. But like many communities, we do have a long way to go, and our young people are still hitting a lot of these barriers on a daily basis.
I love the whole idea of being an ally. And that stands out, and it's often in this conversation, but I see it play out in movies, and that's when I love to see it play out, is every Batman has a Robin, Frodo has Samwise, Harry Potter has Hermione and Ron. They're their allies, they're best friends. And as I hear Chris and Melissa up here talking, they're talking about safe people or allies, safe people that they can go to and trust, that are there for them, whether it be a safe adult, a safe best friend, a safe teacher, somebody safe. Safe people are very important. Those allies, those sidekicks, that person next to them. And then they need a safe place to go together. And that's something that I have seen and we work on every single day, is how can we invest and support organizations that create safety. Let's ensure that those nonprofits that are doing this service have safe people working there, that's part of their policies and procedures, that's part of their culture, that's part of their, not just their language on their website, but embedded in their board members, embedded in their staff. And then we wrap around with safe places for them to go. And we have a 12 to 24 collaborative. We're partnering with the city on this, with most players in our community are partnering on this. I think there's about 60 nonprofits and businesses that are all like, yeah, we're gonna be a safe place, and we have safe people around it. That's a beautiful thing, and that's something that we care about and want to invest in. So every Frodo has their Samwise, and Harry Potter has Hermione and Ron to back them up.
So I'm going to stay with you because that's a good transition to the next question. Sidekicks or hero support, if you watch Sky High.
Yes. Oh, I loved Sky High.
Who as an organization are your collaborators? Who do you collaborate with organizationally to do the work that needs to be done every day? Organizations, the school system, government. Who and how does that happen?
So we want to collaborate with everybody, of course. Like, that's what we try to do. But collaboration is more than sometimes it's just a phone call, but it should be more than a phone call and a cup of coffee. It should be more deliberate and more focused. It could go up to a spectrum of formal MOUs and merged agreements and sharing of databases and that kind of stuff, or even shared space. I would say some of our key collaborators are those nonprofits that we're funding and partnering with. And we really try to look at it as not an us and them, but rather we. We need those nonprofits, and so we invest with them in making our community a better place. And so nonprofits are probably that first in our collaboration scale. Looking at the government community, FCPS, I think those are key partners in this, but that can be a little bit clunky sometimes. It's harder to have MOUs in some cases with those organizations because they're bigger, but it doesn't mean we're not trying to talk to them and have coffee with them and collaborate as best as we can. But I would say we want to partner with everybody. It's an us collaboration and not an us and them. But trying to formalize that is our challenge.
I certainly agree. We want to work with everyone, and that's what makes Frederick so special. We really do mean that. Quite frankly, I don't think any of us care how the person who we're serving gets the service. We just care that they get it, right? I would say for SHIP, our most major partner is the Frederick County Public School System. We also have partnerships with the local colleges, and we partner with any sort of educational institution. We partner with the Maryland School for the Deaf quite frequently because we want to provide the service in the schools. We want to meet students where they are and keep them connected to those educational resources. And that often looks like an open dialogue, and I think that's really key. Someone said earlier, this is not passive, right? That relationship and that support is not passive, and we really truly believe that. We know that sometimes things look differently to the people we're working with and the students that we're talking with every day than they do to those making the decisions, and we feel that it's our role to better inform those things, and that we do that through partnership. We at SHIP have a youth action board group of individuals with lived experience who are still young people. So they have experienced homelessness. We have several on our current Youth Action Board who are LGBTQ+. And they often inform the feedback that we give to many of the entities that we partner with. So if something happens at the school system that perhaps is seen differently by our young people than maybe it was intended, we are quick to talk with the school system about that. And I think that's a really key part of being that active partner and not just sort of watching things go by and, having that coffee and that handshake. That's part of it. But, we really want to see that consistent back and forth to make sure that we are all improving each other's services and remaining connected to the people that we're in it for, those that we're serving.
So our partnerships run deep and through multiple layers. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, one of the more recent partnerships that we've built with PFLAG Frederick has been such a unique and special partnership as we fight to make sure that inclusive school policies stay in place at our school system. But it's kind of funny, I sit here and I was just thinking through your question while I was listening to Josh and Melissa, and I was thinking, there's probably half the people in this room that I've called at 8 o'clock at night on a Friday in a panic about something, and we all pick up the phone for each other. And Mayor, that includes you. I know I've called you at the middle of the night about a challenge that we've had. Councilmember Russell and Councilmember Keegan-Air have certainly heard from me over the years. SHIP is a very unique organization that we have done a lot of work with. We provide training to their staff and to their host home families, while SHIP helps us by making sure that we have an adequate resource and a safe resource that we can then turn homeless youth over to, so that they can get not just resources, but culturally affirming resources for queer people. But there's also individuals out there that have done so much. And again, just looking out in this crowd, it's so hard not to point out some of the amazing folks like Em Murphy over there, who is doing all of our amazing photography and is an incredible advocate for our Pride program and for our Pride Shop and our Worth the Wait program. Stephen Parnes, who helped bring us the ideas for Aging with Pride, and sitting right next to Stephen is Stewart, who coordinates and organizes all of our Aging with Pride programs. It is a unique community of people interacting with each other, supporting one another, leaning on one another, and knowing that because we're all buried in the work together, that we guarantee that we support one another even when it's not necessarily the most convenient day or time.
So what's a challenge that your organization is facing when doing this advocacy work in the city of Frederick?
So misinformation is a lot easier to spread than actual facts. It is easy for anybody to get up and say anything. And I find that one of my jobs day in and day out is to, A, push back on that misinformation with actual details and actual facts, but then to also calm the community down to what the actual reality is on the ground of what we're dealing with. I'll make no bones about the federal administration's impact on our community right now is absolutely heartbreaking to watch. I have to zero everybody in on and level set the conversation about what's actually happening, what we can control, what we can't control, and what is the real protections that are in place in Frederick City and in Frederick County and in the state of Maryland, so that we can make sure that we are coming at this fight from a level head and from a place where we can be more effective as an advocacy organization, but also as an LGBTQ+ community.
So we receive funding from HUD, from federal government funding, to house unaccompanied youth ages 16 through 24 who are accessing education. And that funding comes with some eligibility requirements. So on our end, we're working at what's called a housing first model. So there are not a huge amount of barriers in the way of getting to this housing. You have to be within ages 16 to 24. You have to be unaccompanied. That's pretty much it. However, HUD has some eligibility requirements regarding what makes you considered experiencing homelessness. So you can be escaping domestic violence, physical domestic violence, You can be sleeping in a hotel that an agency has paid for. You can be sleeping literally on the street or in a park or in a place that's unsafe for habitation. But you can't be couch surfing. If you're couch surfing, you are not technically considered to be experiencing homelessness through HUD definition. However, our school system has a different definition. It's called McKinney-Vento. This is a law that was passed in the 80s, and it requires us to acknowledge those who lack a fixed and adequate nighttime residence. So many of our young people who are going couch to couch to couch, different place every night, very worried about where they're going to sleep, are considered McKinney-Vento, but not considered to be experiencing homelessness by HUD definition. Why am I regaling you with these very interesting facts? Our LGBTQ plus youth are often escaping we would consider unsafe circumstances. But if there was no domestic violence and they are able to land on someone's couch, they don't qualify for our housing. So we are constantly looking at ways to work with them to assess eligibility and make sure that we can safely house them. But often what will happen for these young people is they are escaping situations that are not safe for their mental health, places where they do not feel they can comfortably go home at night. And we have to say, oh, sorry, we are unable to assist in this particular program right now because of the way in which you left your home and because of the way in which you've been able to keep it together up until this point. That is terrible. That is not something we like or agree with. And it does make it very difficult to run our housing programs in an effective and equitable way. It's something that we are constantly working on. In fact, there is actually legislation in front of Congress right now for HUD to adopt the definition of McKinney-Vento youth rather than looking just at HUD homeless. HUD is the only entity that does not accept this definition for these programs. And in fact, we as SHIP have been advocating pretty strongly for this to pass. It would allow us to house a lot more young people. In reality, what happens is those young people are often stuck continuing to couch surf, not given access to the resources and case management that they need, and often disconnect from school. And then we are furthering a dangerous cycle. So, we hope that will change here soon. Please take a look, write to your congressperson. But that's certainly a systemic barrier that we face all the time.
We didn't plan it this way, but our new Director of Housing and Human Services is in the audience here today. Day one today, so you're already giving him some things to put on his to-do list of things to think about, I'm sure.
I told him I was going to make awkward eye contact with him throughout the presentation. Here we are.
Before I go into the challenges, I just want to celebrate that Frederick is a really good place, and we've done a lot of great things to make it inclusive and safe. I wouldn't have felt comfortable 5, 10, 15 years ago up here, so I do now, and I think Frederick is a good place. So I just want to celebrate that we have a Frederick Center. It's been here for 10 years. That's a tremendous milestone. We have Melissa, who is talking about issues and systemic changes in the programs and the services that she delivers to be more inclusive. What a celebration to have leaders like this, to have you, Mayor, to have this crowd here to say, you know what, we're going to do something good. And that is something worthwhile and we're celebrating. So challenges, I will echo what Chris and Melissa have said about misinformation, about systemic policies still being homophobic and exclusive, lack of funding. If you look at the social media site for just this event, the weaponization of faith. And growing up in Utah and the faith community where I grew up, to see faith weaponized against me, that's a big challenge. And so ditto everything what has been said, and I'll add that. Thanks.
We're going to go to a video again, and this is somebody that might be familiar to all of us, talking about some of the impacts that the Frederick Center is making in people's day-to-day lives to make life more manageable.
When they reach out and they say that the sheer existence of this center helps to make their day-to-day life a little bit more manageable, it means a lot. And it reminds us that as we're exhausted and we work tirelessly to provide that support, that that this work is needed, it's critical, and it's valued by our community. We cannot possibly understate the emotional and physical impact that having a physical space and a staff like the Frederick Center in Frederick County has had on our community.
And what's
It was
apparent,
fancy. A suit and everything.
and what's apparent from hearing you talk as well is that it's personal. You know, it's more than just the work that you do every day. And so talk to us, each of you, about a success story, about the impact of the work that you do.
So we have one, and Martin, one of our staff members who's here, was going to laugh at me. We have this amazing, we'll call him a client, but really he's become a friend of the center over the years. And he was one of the very first members that attended our very first youth group. And when he attended, he was deeply in the closet as a trans person. He was still female presenting and struggling massively with his identity. And watching his transition, both emotionally and physically, has been one of the best experiences of my life. I've gotten to spend the last 13 years with him, and he's an incredibly resilient person, going up against his own family who does not believe that he's trans and still believes now, 10 years after transitioning, that he is just going through a phase. He has dealt with social stigma. He has been assaulted. He has been verbally accosted. He has had so much thrown at him, and he struggles day in and day out, but he always comes back to the center. And he comes back because he knows we will listen in a judgment-free space. We will advocate on his behalf always. And I will say, on a personal level, the coolest experience of my life was in 2020 when he got his gender affirmation surgery, and he asked if I would be willing to go down with him and take him home, and if we could figure out how to take care of him during the COVID crisis. And we got a local gay couple, one of whom was a nurse, to act as caretaker for him while he was recovering from that surgery. And the impact of watching a person finally drop a portion of their dysphoria to see them proudly see themselves, it is a deeply impactful moment. Sorry. Deeply impactful moment for anybody. And it reminds you that while the center serves hundreds of people a year, hundreds and hundreds, it's all about the one individual story each time. Sorry.
So true. We had a young person. I've been with SHIP for about 4 years now. And I remember when I first started, it was one of the first young people that I interacted with. And he was at the time, he and his mother were escaping a domestic violence situation. The father, eventually was incarcerated. They were leaving, and so they were experiencing housing instability. And so we were stepping in and providing some case management at the school level, making sure that the young person was transported back and forth to school. We're doing all of our regular things, right? And a few months went by, and we're doing this, and we get a call from the school, and the school says we can't find him. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. What's going on?" And they said, "Well, we've been out to the house a couple of times. We haven't heard anything. Mom hasn't told us anything. We're not sure what to do." I said, "Okay." So we involved the case manager, who by this time had built a relationship with the young person and was able to find him. And it turned out that he had come out to Mom, and Mom had said, "Good luck." And so he had left, and Mom didn't want him back, even though she herself was in an incredibly unstable housing situation and was experiencing a variety of barriers. And so he stopped coming to school, and he was trying to get a job, but didn't have any of the things he needed to do that because he left with pretty much nothing and he couldn't go back. So because our case manager had already built this relationship with him, and because he trusted her, we were able to intervene and get him set up with a variety of things, job interviews and the appropriate clothing to wear to those job interviews and the hygiene supplies that he desperately needed by that point. We were able to get him into our housing program, so we were able to house him fairly quickly in a stable and welcoming, supportive environment. Fast forward 2 years, and he graduated from high school, and he is now at a 4-year college. So it was incredibly satisfying to see how wonderful that young person is turning out to be, and how successful his story is after he was faced with such incredible challenges every step of the way. And thank goodness that we have such a wonderful partner in our school system, and that we had built such a strong relationship with this young person. But I'm so grateful that we were able to provide those resources. And like you said, Chris, it's just one story of the many young people that we're working with every day. And it's amazing to think about how these situations could turn out differently with just one small change in that scenario.
Yeah.
Before we heard the success part of the stories that Chris and Melissa shared, I just want to acknowledge how exhausting that first part of the journey is, because there's still a lot of challenges, and the success hasn't arrived for everyone yet. And we hear those stories, and that's probably the most taxing part of our work. It's the most taxing part of what you all encounter and hear about in your families, in your circles. So as I think of the success, I think of the allyship and people coming together. And I remember walking around the Pride Festival over the last couple of years, and I'm like, oh, it's not just the Frederick Center that's doing this, and the businesses that want to be there. It's the Mental Health Association, and it's the Boys and Girls Club. There are other nonprofits that are committed, and they're showing up. It's the health department. And that allyship that, hey, we're all in this together, to me is probably one of the most successful things, is that it's not just about the people that it directly affects. It's about other people who it doesn't directly affect that stand up and support and say, hey, we got your back. We're going to be here. It's not just people from the LGBTQ population standing up at the school board meeting talking about 443, the policy. There are other allies showing up and saying, you know what, we got to do better for our community. So that, for me, is the biggest success.
And if I can just give quick flowers to the Osherman Family Foundation, because, and they've heard me tell this story so many times, I'm sure Josh and Lee and everybody else is probably like, here he goes again. When the Frederick Center started, when the Frederick Center started in 2012, we were completely self-funded by individuals who just gave a few bucks here and there. We struggled to figure out how to grow over that first hump. And it was the Osherman Family Foundation who came to us first. And it was Lee Adams, and she helped shepherd us to understand how to apply for a private grant, nevertheless to receive one. I'm sure the first report I ever sent her was riddled with all kinds of problems, but they led with grace, and they helped an organization, a small nonprofit that was suffering, to figure out how to create sustainability through the grant writing process. And it was without the Osherman Family Foundation that the Frederick Center would never have managed to make it even to the second step in its iteration and its growth. So Osherman Family Foundation is exactly that kind of allyship that our community needs. Thanks, Josh.
We would not have our housing program if not for the Osherman Family Foundation. So thank you. It's a great point. And now, we've been able to, with that, starter support, we've been able to grow the program to one that is being looked at by other organizations around the country as a model for successful intervention of unaccompanied youth. We would never have been able to get here without them.
And Frederick is great because we have your organizations there. So this is a love fest.
Okay, you got to cut us
Both
off.
ways.
We're gonna
We can't help ourselves. Yep.
So, Chris, you mentioned Martin earlier,
Yes.
and here he is talking about celebrating unique experiences in a time of great divisiveness.
We're living in a time where I think there's a lot of divisive language that threatens to pull us apart and distracts us from our shared humanity. And having a community like Frederick that values its diversity, from our community to other minority communities around here, by celebrating the unique experiences that we all bring, we create a more vibrant and amazing and fun and creative and diverse Frederick.
So we are going to end on a high note.
Yes.
But before we get there, I think we do need to hear where there are still some systemic barriers that need to change in Frederick to better support LGBTQ plus individuals and families.
So I will just say the root of all challenges is money, is access to resources and money. The fact is, as we have seen our center grow in revenue, we have seen the demand on the expense sheet go up almost perfectly parallel. It is unbelievable the amount of new ideas, new programs, new resources that individuals we are discovering need access to on a day-to-day basis. They need access to housing, they need access to healthcare, they need access to mental health supports, they need access to the hospital and the emergency room. So we spend a lot of time going out and advocating, and what makes it so nice sometimes is that because we have a supportive government in the city and the county, it doesn't take a lot to convince the county executive or the county council or the city council or you, mayor, that, hey, this investment is a good investment into the center. And so we thank all of you, all of our government partners, because you help keep up the operational component of all of this that we're struggling with. With that being said, it is a constant chasing the end goal for us of, oh, wow, there's all these people struggling, and how do we first triage to address all of those issues?
Completely agree. Yeah. And I think that a lack of information and understanding also continues to be a barrier, which sounds general, I know, but a good example. If you've been to the restrooms in the Sieber Arts Public Library, you may have seen our cute little bins where there are feminine hygiene products provided by SHIP in the restroom. We do this because we are not open 24/7. I know the library isn't either, but the library has late hours. So a lot of our young people, after they're done with school and they're waiting to go to work, will go to the library, which is accessible by bus, and be there for quite a long time. And thank goodness our library is so welcoming and wonderful, and so they allow us to do this. When this project started, were proposing, hey, we'd like to put them in various locations and we want to make sure they're in both the male and female restrooms. And there was a lot of discussion as to why that would be the case. And I think, it's a perfect example of all extremely well-intentioned, right? All very willing and happy to learn and happy to hear it. But people don't know a lot of these things. And I think, the more information that we can provide to our community and the people who are seeing this day to day without even realizing it, the better off we will be and the more equitable our approach will be as a community to making this environment welcoming and comfortable. Because again, I love it and I can't say it enough, it's not passive. We have to really be paying attention and making those thoughtful decisions to make sure that we are understanding and learning. And, I love working with Chris and with Josh because I am the one that needs to learn, right? I don't know all the things. And I love that their way of teaching people is very much, here, I'm going to tell you what it is, ask your questions, and then let's move past it. There's no judgment, there's no concern. It's very much, let's talk about it, and let's figure it out, and let's make sure we're working together to do it. And that's, again, it's a difference in the Frederick community and one I'm really grateful for. But I think the more information that we can provide in a proactive way to everyone that we're talking to on a daily basis, the better off we will be. And money.
Ditto. Resources, financial resources, money, and that correct information and learning and understanding. I trust you, Melissa. We're so glad. Our community is so happy to have you here. So thank you for the work that you do. And I think if we just had more people like Melissa and Chris and other leaders in our community, the mayor has my back. I know that. We need a critical mass of people like this, those advocates to step up. So I think that's what's going to change some of those systems is the critical mass.
So it's time to wrap up in a sentence or two, if you're capable of that.
No.
And I know you are. What gives you hope for the future of LGBTQ plus rights in Frederick?
Oh my gosh, walk downtown in June. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. Oh, it's so cool. Businesses will clobber each other to be the most supportive of Pride Month. Oh my gosh, what other place can say that? I'm so hopeful.
Hope for me is a capability that we can do it. I know it's within our community to be inclusive. So that's my hope.
It's one of my favorite things to do when I'm exhausted and when I'm feeling despair is to hang out at the center on Wednesday nights and just work at my desk because you hear dozens of happy queer children, you heard Glory talk about it, running around and you sense the world is not ending. There is joy. Which isn't always the case. But that watching those young people run around brings me hope. But on the flip side of that, watching people who come out later in life, watching people realize that they can talk openly about this, listening to Josh's story, listening to some friends out here in the audience's story, about how they have come to terms with their sexual identity or their gender, has always brought me great hope because it makes me realize the more and more we do that, the more our society will move forward to the point where we realize that none of us are really alone in that journey.
Let's say thank you to our panelists. Josh, Melissa, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. You have, I think, filled all of us with joy with your conversation, and I am immensely proud, filled with pride at my community and the people that work every day to make it a wonderful place for every person. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month.